Good day, class. How are you all doing? I hope you had a wonderful night. Welcome back to class and welcome to our second lesson for the academic year. Well, if you remember during the last class, we talked on sounds. What did we say sounds were? What did we say sounds were? If you would remember correctly and if you have been reading, you will realize that, or you will remember that we said sounds are the raw materials from which letters are formed, or rather, sounds are the raw forms of letters. We compared it to our natural daily activities of manufacturing shoes, clothes. We say just like cotton is a raw material from which cloth and wool is formed or is produced, just like animal skin is a raw material from which shoes and bags are produced, so are sounds to letters. So we say sounds are the raw materials from which letters are developed. They are the raw forms of letters. We also said that a sound is what you perceive. What you perceive when a letter is called out or pronounced in a word. So we said a sound is what you hear. What you perceive is what you hear when a letter is called out in a word. We took an example of the letter A and its pronunciation in different words, as in the word again, man, bad. And we saw that the letter A in these words had different spelling, different pronunciation, as in A in apple, A in again, A in man and bad. So we said the sound there is what you hear. So the sound of the letter A in the word apple was A. The sound of the letter A in the word again was A and A, just like in man and bad. We also went further to look at two very peculiar sounds of the English language. We looked at the A and the I sounds. We also brought out words carrying these sounds, and we also looked at the importance of sounds. And if you remember, we said sounds help us to pronounce words correctly. The study of sounds helps us to be able to spell words correctly, and it also helps us into splitting words. It helps us in splitting words into syllables. So today we'll be looking at another aspect of the English language. Today we'll be looking at the simple past tenses. What are past tenses? I know that from your very elementary level of education, you have been hearing of the word past tense. How many past tenses do you know? Well, today we will be looking at the simple past tenses. Let's look at the conversation below. From this conversation, you're going to come out with a definition of what a simple past tense is, and what it is used for, and how it is used, and when it should be used. So, we look at the conversation, we look at the first speaker. You attended the show yesterday. Who won? You attended the show yesterday. Who won? And speaker B says, it was great. The girls danced so well, the boys could not beat them. So, from reading this conversation, or from listening to this conversation, what can you imagine? Or what do you understand? Well, if from your understanding of the passage, you got that they are talking about something that has already happened, then you're right. Because they are actually talking about something that has already happened. How do you know that they are talking about something that has happened? What is it about the conversation that makes you to think that they are talking about something in the past or an event that has already been completed? Well, I'm sure it's because of the words they use, the choice of words. So which are these words in this passage that will enable you to know that they are talking about an activity of the past or an activity that has been completed? And what are these words called? The words that will enable you know that a conversation is being narrated from the past. A conversation is being talked about from the past. What are these words that will enable you to know that the conversation is in the past? And what are the words called? Well, I'm sure this is what it's called the simple past tense. That is what the simple past tense is. So the words in blue in this conversation are used in the simple past tense. The words were attended. You attended the party yesterday. You attended the show yesterday. Who won? As Kabi said, it was great. The girls danced so well. The boys could not beat them. So the highlighted words attended, won, was, danced, and who have been used in the past tense, in the simple past tense. Attended is a simple past tense of the verb to attend. Won is a simple past tense of win, the verb to win. Was is the simple past tense of the verb to be. Danced of the verb to dance. And can, to can, is the simple past tense of the verb to be able, the word can. So then from that conversation, we derive the meaning of the word simple past tense. So we therefore come to the definition that the simple past tense is a word or is used to talk about things that happens or happened in the past. So we use the simple past tense to talk about things that happened in the past, events that happened in the past, or events that have already been completed. How long do you think the past can be? The past can be so many years ago. It could be 10, 15, 20 years, even 100 years. It could be a week, it could be a month, it could be a day, or it could just be a few minutes or hours ago. So when narrating anything, that any action that has already occurred, whether it was 1 minute ago or 100 years ago, we use a simple past tense because the action has already taken place and is in the past. So just like the pyramid, the simple past tense has 3 main markers. The simple past tense is formed in 3 main ways. So it's either formed by using the D at the end of the original spelling of the word, or adding an ED to the end letter, or replacing an N letter with an IED. Let's look at the following examples below. The first category is the formation of the simple past tense by adding a D to the end spelling. Look at the examples below. Dance, love, and note. The verb to dance, the verb to love, the verb to note. How do you tell somebody that you dance? How do you tell somebody about a dancing activity that took place yesterday? Would you say yesterday the girls dancing very much? Or the girls dancing very well? Or would you say the girls danced very well? You rather say yesterday the girls danced very well. When we were younger, I loved Mary. You will not say, when we were younger, I loved Mary. You say, when we were younger, I loved Mary. And you also say, yesterday, I noted the mistakes you made in his homework. Instead of saying, yesterday, I noted the mistakes he made in his homework. So, verbs that end in E take the D to form their simple past tenses. So verbs that end in E, just as in the verb to dance, the verb to love, the verb to note, you simply form its simple past tense by adding a D at the end of the spelling. Let's look at the second category. The second category is made up of words that form their simple past tenses by adding an ed to the verb. Let's look at the examples below. We see the verb to watch, the verb to pray, the verb to jump, and the verb to play. When talking about activities like these in the past, we will talk about them adding an ed to the end of the word. So instead of saying that yesterday I watched TV, we will say yesterday I watched TV. I prayed in the morning before coming to school. Yesterday I jumped over the fence. And this afternoon I played with my friends after eating. I played with my friends after taking my lunch. So when talking about words, activities that have happened in the past, you also use ed to represent the simple past tense, to form the simple past tense. Let's look at the third category. The third category is made up of words that form their simple past tenses by replacing the N letter with an IED. So in this category, a letter is removed. The N letter of the original word is removed and replaced by an IED, or is replaced with an IED. Examples of such words are the verb to try, the verb to cry, and the verb to carry. We also have verbs like the verb to marry and the verb to bury. So, you will, instead of writing the try with the Y, you remove the Y and replace it with an IED. So you say, I tried calling him yesterday, but his number was not going through. I cried yesterday when I saw them killing that animal. Yesterday, I carried a heavy basket to the farm. So, these are the third category of simple past tense formation in the English language. Well, I want you to note not to be confused with the second category and the third category, especially with verbs like the verb to pray and the verb to play. We see that the verb to play and the verb to pray all end in Y, in the letter Y, just as the third category of the verb to try, the verb to carry, and the verb to cry. But in the second category, an ed is added to the verb to pray and the verb to play. But in the third category, the Y is removed and replaced by an IED. Why is it so? So I don't want you to be confused. In the second category, the verb to pray, you simply add an ed. In the verbs ending in Y that are preceded by the lesser arrow, they are formed by replacing the Y by an IED. But other verbs that form their Y, the other verbs that are spelled, that whose end letter is Y, but is preceded by a vowel, as in pray and play. There's an A before the Y. You simply add an ED on the Y. And in the third category, where there's an arrow before the Y, you simply remove the Y and add an IED. So don't be confused between the two. So we know that in the third category, you replace the Y with an IED. And the second category, where you simply add an ED to the end letter of the verb. Also, some verbs have their end letters double. Some verbs form their simple past tense by doubling the end letter and then adding an ed. So examples of such words are the verb to tap, the verb to clap, the verb to stop, and the verb to lob. So we see that verbs like this form their simple past tenses by doubling their last letter. So we see that in the verb to tap, instead of just adding an ed, we double to the p, we add another p, then add an ed. So in such verbs, in this category, the end letters are doubled before adding the ed. However, we should also know that some verbs in the English language neither take the D, the ED, nor the IED in forming their simple past tenses. They rather form a completely new word. Instead, they form their past tenses by bringing in a completely different word. And such verbs are called irregular verbs. Unlike the verbs that end in D, ED, IED, these verbs form their past tenses by completely bringing in a new word. So as we said, the verbs are called irregular verbs, while the other verbs that form their past tenses by either taking a D, an ED, or an IED are called regular verbs. They are regular verbs because they have a fixed pattern of forming their simple past tenses. They are either taking a D, where the verb ends in an E. When the last letter of the verb is spelled with an E, it's automatically the principle that it forms a simple past tense by adding a D. When the verb ends with an RY, you know that you are replacing the Y with an IED. And the other category, you just add an ED to the verb. But in those verbs are called regular verbs. But in these other categories, the verbs form the simple past tenses that what one cannot even imagine. They are just irregular. They form their simple past tenses using different words. Examples include the verb to eat, the verb to sing, the verb to go, the verb to bring, and the verb to teach. These, among others, are the irregular verbs. So we see the verb to eat forms its past tense as ate, sing as sang, go as went, bring as brought, and teach as taught. Well, you go back and read on more irregular verbs. See you next class. Ciao.